They say blood is thicker than water, but they never mention the cost. Watching my $85,000 Centurion turn into smoking scrap metal, I did not cry. I did not scream when Mom asked me to lie to the police to save my sister again. I just waited. I waited for the ink on their lies to dry. When the trap finally snapped, the only sound left was the shattering of a family that had been rotten from the inside out. My name is Hope Lamberton, and for the last 10 years, I have made a living by imposing order on nature. As a lead landscape architect at Vertex Design Group, I take overgrown, chaotic plots of land and discipline them into serenity. I build retaining walls to hold back collapsing earth. I design drainage systems to divert floods. I create boundaries that look like art, but function like fortresses. My clients pay me exorbitant amounts of money because they want to believe that with the right design, the wildness of the world can be kept at bay. It is a beautiful lie, but it is one I have become very good at selling. I was 34 years old, and I had finally built a life that felt structurally sound. The greatest symbol of that stability was currently humming beneath my hands. It was a Centurion Obsidian, a massive blacked-out SUV that looked less like a vehicle and more like a rolling panic room. It had cost me $85,000. It was excessive. It was arrogant. And I absolutely loved it. The leather seats hugged my spine with a firmness that felt like reassurance, and the cabin was so quiet that the roaring wind outside was reduced to a polite whisper. I had bought it 3 weeks ago, not just for the status, but for the distance it put between who I was now and the girl who used to take the bus to community college with holes in her sneakers. But as I turned off the interstate and onto the cracked asphalt leading towards Silver Creek, that distance began to shrink. The suspension of the Obsidian absorbed the potholes, but my stomach did not. I was going home for my mother's 60th birthday. Brenda, the woman who loved too much and thought too little, and waiting with her would be Tiffany. Tiffany was 25 years old. If I was the architect who built walls, Tiffany was the hurricane that tested them. She was my younger sister, the baby, the one who had never quite managed to launch because Mom was always there to catch her before she could learn how to fly. I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in. It looked smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling in strips like dead skin. Parked askew on the gravel was Mom's car, a dented sedan that was 15 years old and sounded like a lawnmower with a respiratory infection. I parked the Obsidian next to it. The contrast was obscene. My car looked like a spaceship that had landed in a salvage yard. The black paint was so glossy it reflected the gray sky and the drooping willow tree in the front yard. I took a breath, holding it for 5 seconds, then exhaled. I grabbed my purse and stepped out. The front door opened before I could knock. Tiffany stood there. She was wearing sweatpants that were designed to look expensive but were covered in cat hair, and a tank top that showed off a tattoo on her shoulder she had gotten on a whim and now regretted. She was beautiful, in that sharp, hungry way that made people want to give her things just to see her smile. She wasn't smiling now. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They went straight to the car behind me. I saw the calculation happen in real time. She looked at the chrome rims, the tinted windows, the sheer size of the beast. Her expression shifted from curiosity to a naked, acidic envy. "Nice rental," she said, leaning against the doorframe. I locked the car with the fob, the chirp loud in the quiet afternoon. "It is not a rental, Tiff. I bought it last month." Her eyebrows shot up. She let out a short, dry laugh. "Must be nice. Mom is in the kitchen. She is trying to fix the stove again. She didn't move to hug me. She just stepped aside, her eyes still glued to the SUV as I walked past her into the house. The smell hit me instantly. It was the smell of my childhood, vanilla candles masking the scent of old carpet and mildew. Mom was wrestling with the oven door. When she saw me, her face lit up with a relief that made my chest ache. She rushed over, wiping her hands on her apron, and pulled me into a hug that was too tight. She felt smaller, frailer. 60 years of carrying other people's burdens had worn her down. "Happy birthday." "Mom," I said, handing her a gift bag containing a silk scarf and a spa voucher worth $500. "Oh, Hope, you shouldn't have," she said, her eyes watering. She looked over my shoulder. "Is that your car out front? The big black one?" I nodded. "It is beautiful," she whispered, almost reverently. "The neighbors are going to talk about that for weeks." From the living room, Tiffany's voice drifted in, loud and sharp. "Yeah. They will probably talk about how Hope drives a tank while her own mother drives a piece of junk that stalls at every red light." Mom flinched. I felt my jaw tighten. "Stop it, Tiffany," Mom called out, but her voice lacked authority. It was a plea, not a command. Dinner was an exercise in endurance. We sat around the small oak table that still bore the scratches from our childhood forks. I had paid for the food, a catered spread from the best Italian place in the next town over. But Tiffany picked at the lasagna like it was poison. "So," Tiffany said, stabbing a ravioli, "how much is the monthly payment on that monstrosity? Or did you pay cash with all your big architect bonuses?" I took a sip of water. "I manage my finances. Tiffany, you should try it sometime." She slammed her fork down. "I would, if I had your luck. I have been applying for jobs. Hope, but nobody is hiring, and my car is dead. So how am I supposed to get to interviews? Mom has to drive me everywhere like I am 12. You are 25, I said, my voice steady. "You could take the bus." "I took the bus for 4 years. Tiffany rolled her eyes. "The bus is disgusting. Besides, why should I suffer just because you are obsessed with hoarding your money? You come here, flaunting that car, rubbing it in our faces." "Hope is not rubbing anything in our faces," Mom interjected, placing a hand on Tiffany's arm. "She worked hard for it." "Honey," Tiffany shook Mom's hand off. "You always take her side. Just because she buys you fancy scarves. Does the scarf pay the electric bill?" "Mom, no." The air in the room was thick enough to choke on. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to reprimand Tiffany, to tell her to stop acting like a spoiled brat on her mother's birthday. But Mom just looked tired. She looked at Tiffany with a mixture of guilt and fear, the way one looks at a bomb that might go off if handled too roughly. I finished my meal in silence. I was the guest, yet I felt like the intruder. Later that evening, the ritual began. It was a habit ingrained in me from years of living with roommates I didn't trust, and reinforced by a lifetime of knowing Tiffany. I checked the front door lock. I checked the back door lock. Then, I picked up my purse. In most houses, people hang their keys on the little brass hooks by the door. We had those hooks. Mom's keys were there, hanging limply. I looked at them. Then I looked at the heavy fob of my Centurion. If I left them there, they became community property. That was the unspoken rule of this house. What is yours is ours, and what is ours is Tiffany's. I dropped the keys into the zippered inside pocket of my purse. I carried the purse upstairs to my old bedroom. I placed it on the dresser, next to my phone. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, the springs creaking familiarly. I pulled out my phone and opened the vehicle management app. The screen showed the status of the Obsidian locked. Fuel at 80%, tire pressure normal. My thumb hovered over a toggle switch labeled Valet Mode. This mode was designed for parking attendants or mechanics. It limited the speed to 15 miles per hour, disabled the infotainment system, and locked the glove box. It also activated continuous video recording from all cameras. I almost turned it on. My gut told me to turn it on. I knew Tiffany. I knew her entitlement knew no bounds. But then I looked around my old room. The debate trophies on the shelf. The faded poster of a rock band I used to love. I was home. My car was parked right under my mother's window. Turning on valet mode felt paranoid. It felt like an insult to my mother. An admission that I viewed her house as hostile territory. I am being ridiculous. I thought, Tiffany is annoying, but she is not a criminal. I closed the app without activating the restrictions. It was a decision made in a moment of sentimental weakness, a lapse in judgment that I would replay in my head for the rest of my life. A light knock on the doorframe interrupted my thoughts. Mom stood there, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Can I come in?" she asked. I scooted over on the bed. "Of course." She sat down. handing me a mug. It was chamomile, her peace offering of choice. We sipped in silence for a moment, the sounds of the television drifting up from downstairs where Tiffany was watching a reality show. "I am sorry about dinner," Mom said softly. "She is just going through a hard time. Hope, she feels stuck. She is stuck because she refuses to walk. Mom, she waits for people to carry her." Mom sighed, tracing the rim of her mug. "She admires you. You know, she sees what you have, and she just wants a piece of that happiness." I set my mug down on the nightstand. "That car is not happiness. Mom, it is a machine, and I work 60 hours a week to pay for it." I know. Mom paused, and I felt the shift in the air. I knew what was coming. I had built defenses against floods and landslides, but I had never successfully built a defense against my mother's martyrdom. "Hope," she started, not meeting my eyes. "Her transmission is gone. The mechanic says it will cost $2,000 to fix, and the car is not worth $500. She really does need a way to get around. If she had a car, she could get that job at the mall. She could start contributing." I stared at her. "Mom, no, I have not even asked yet. You want me to buy her a car? Or you want me to give you the money to buy her one? It does not have to be a new one." Mom said hurriedly, her words tumbling out, "Just something reliable. Maybe you could co-sign or lend us the down payment. You have done so well. Hope, Vertex pays you so much." I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the driveway. The obsidian sat there, a black void in the darkness. "Mom," I said, keeping my back to her, "I paid off your mortgage last year. I paid for the new roof. I pay your health insurance premiums. I know. And I am so grateful," she said, her voice trembling. "I am not an ATM, and Tiffany is not my child. If I buy her a car, she will wreck it or sell it or let it rot, because she has never had to earn anything in her life." The answer is no. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. "Okay," Mom whispered. "Okay, I just thought I would ask." She stood up, looking defeated. The guilt washed over me, a familiar, toxic tide, but I did not wade into it. I stayed on the shore. "Get some sleep." "Mom," I said. She nodded and left the room, closing the door softly behind her. I changed into an old oversized t-shirt and boxers. I checked the door handle, ensuring it was latched. Though there was no lock on my bedroom door, I checked the dresser. My purse was there, my keys were inside, my phone was charging. I turned off the lamp and lay in the dark. The house settled with groans and creaks, sounds that used to comfort me, but now sounded like warnings. I could hear Tiffany moving around downstairs, the heavy thud of her footsteps, then the sound of the back door opening and closing. She was probably going out to smoke, or to call one of her friends to complain about her rich, heartless sister. I closed my eyes, trying to force myself to relax. The sheets smelled of lavender detergent, but underneath that, there was the scent of dust and stagnation. I drifted into a shallow, uneasy sleep, haunted by the feeling that I had forgotten to check something, that I had left a gate open somewhere, and the wolves were already circling the perimeter. I slept, unaware that downstairs, a hand was reaching for a spare key to the front door, and a plan was forming that would shatter the fragile peace of my carefully constructed life. The silence of the house was not peace. It was the holding of breath before a scream. The sound that shattered my sleep was not a noise. It was a physical blow. It was a digital shriek from the nightstand, piercing through the heavy veil of a dreamless slumber. I jolted upright, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The room was pitch black, save for the aggressive, rhythmic flashing of my phone screen. I squinted at the display. It was 3:15 in the morning. The caller ID did not show a name, just a string of numbers and a local area code. The logical part of my brain, the part that managed construction sites and calculated load-bearing tolerances, tried to argue that it was a wrong number, but the primal part of my brain, the part that had grown up in this house walking on eggshells, knew better. Nothing good ever happened in the Lamberton family after midnight. I swiped the green icon and brought the phone to my ear. My hand was trembling. Hello. My voice was a croak, thick with sleep and fear. Is this Hope Lamberton? The voice on the other end was male, flat, and professional. It was the voice of authority, stripped of all emotion. Yes. Who is this? This is Officer Miller with the County Sheriff's Department. I am calling regarding a vehicle registered in your name, a black Centurion Obsidian. License plate number, Victor Echo 79. The cold that washed over me had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. It started at the base of my skull and paralyzed my limbs. Yes, I whispered. That is my car. There has been an accident. Ms. Lamberton. The vehicle was involved in a single-car collision on County Road 9, near the reservoir. We need you to come down to the scene immediately. Is everyone okay? I asked. But my eyes were already moving. They were scanning the top of the dresser. The digital clock glowed red in the darkness. Next to it, my phone charger cable snaked across the wood. And next to that was my purse. It was open, not just unzipped, but gaping. The leather flap was folded back. The contents spilled slightly. I dropped the phone to the mattress and lunged for the bag. I plunged my hand into the interior pocket, my fingers scrabbling against the lining. Empty. I grabbed the bag and turned it upside down, shaking it violently. Lip balm, a pen, a receipt, and a pack of gum fell onto the floor. But no heavy, leather-bound key fob, no silver key ring. I scrambled off the bed, my bare feet hitting the cold floorboards, and ran to the window. I tore the curtains aside. The driveway was bathed in the pale, sickly yellow light of the street lamp. The space next to my mother's battered sedan was empty. It looked like a missing tooth, a void where my $85,000 achievement had been parked just 6 hours ago. The gravel was churned up. Deep, aggressive ruts cut through the immaculate lawn my mother tried so hard to maintain. 2 dark scars leading out onto the road. She had not just taken it. She had launched it. I picked up the phone again. Officer Ms. Lamberton. I am coming, I said. I am coming right now. I hung up and ran into the hallway. The house was silent, a tomb of secrets. I did not bother to be quiet. I pounded on my mother's bedroom door, the sound echoing like gunshots in the stillness. Mom, wake up. I heard a gasp from inside. Then the rustling of sheets. The door flew open. Mom stood there in her faded floral nightgown, her hair a bird's nest of gray and brown. Her eyes were wide, terrified. What? What is it? Is it a fire? Tiffany took my car, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it felt like clarity. The police just called. She crashed it. Mom blinked. Her brain was trying to process the information, but it snagged on the one thing that always mattered most to her. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask if the car was destroyed. She did not ask if anyone was hurt. She grabbed my shoulders, her fingernails digging into my skin. Did they arrest her? She shrieked. Hope, tell me, is she in handcuffs? I stared at her. The question hung in the air, grotesque and revealing. I do not know. Mom, I am going to the scene. Get dressed. The drive to County Road 9 was a blur of shadows and silence. I drove Mom's car, the engine wheezing and rattling as I pushed it faster than it was meant to go. Mom sat in the passenger seat, wringing her hands, muttering a stream of prayers that sounded more like negotiations. She was bargaining with God, promising change, promising better behavior. If only her baby girl could slide out of consequences one more time. I said nothing. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I was thinking about the valet mode. I was thinking about how I had almost turned it on. I was thinking about the thief who had crept into my room while I slept, stood over my bed, and reached into my personal property. We saw the lights before we saw the car. Blue and red strobes cut through the mist rising off the reservoir. There were 3 cruisers, an ambulance, and a fire truck. The scene was chaotic, a tableau of disaster illuminated by high beams and flares. I pulled over onto the shoulder and killed the engine. Mom was out of the car before it had fully stopped moving. She ran toward the lights, her nightgown fluttering under her coat. I followed, my steps heavy, dread pooling in my stomach like lead. Then I saw it. Or rather, I saw what was left of it. The Centurion obsidian, my fortress, my symbol of success, was wrapped around a utility pole. The impact had been catastrophic. The entire front end of the vehicle was gone, accordion-ed into a mass of twisted steel and shattered plastic. The hood was crumpled up like a discarded piece of paper. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. Smoke or maybe steam was rising from the wreckage in thin gray wisps. The pole had sheared through the front bumper and grille. Stopping just inches from the cabin, the massive 22-inch wheels were bent at impossible angles. It looked like a dead animal. A large, expensive, dead animal. Mom was screaming Tiffany's name. She tried to push past a uniformed officer, but he held her back firmly. "Ma'am, you need to stay back," he ordered. "Where is she? Where is my daughter?" Mom wailed. I walked up behind her. I did not scream. I just stared at the car. I looked at the side curtain airbags that had deployed, hanging like limp white ghosts in the windows. I looked at the reinforced steel frame that I had read about in the brochure. The safety cage that was rated 5 stars, it had done its job. The cabin was intact. Over near the ambulance, sitting on the back bumper with a thermal blanket wrapped around her shoulders, was Tiffany. She was not in handcuffs. She was not in a body bag. She was holding an ice pack to her forehead and crying, not the silent, shocked tears of a survivor, but the loud, hiccuping sobs of a child who wants attention. 2 other people were with her. I recognized them vaguely from Tiffany's social media. A girl with pink hair and a guy in a ripped denim jacket. The girl was holding her neck, wincing. The guy was sitting on the ground, looking dazed. But what caught my eye was the guy's hand. He was holding a phone, and even in his dazed state, the phone was held up. The camera lens pointed at the wreckage. I walked closer. I could hear Tiffany's voice. It came out of nowhere. She sobbed to the paramedic attending to a small cut on her arm. A deer. A huge deer. I swerved to save it. I got close enough to smell the air around them. It reeked of cheap vodka and cranberry juice. It was a smell that cut through the exhaust fumes and the scent of burnt oil. Mom broke free from the officer and rushed to Tiffany. She threw her arms around her, rocking her back and forth. "Oh, my baby. Oh, thank God. Are you hurt? Did you hit your head?" Tiffany buried her face in Mom's shoulder. "Mom, I was so scared. The steering wheel just locked up. The car malfunctioned. It is a piece of junk. I stopped 10 feet away. I watched my sister lie to my mother, and I watched my mother swallow the lie whole because it tasted better than the truth." "Excuse me." I turned. A tall officer with a clipboard was standing next to me. His face was grim. "Are you Hope Lamberton?" "Yes," I said. "Is that your vehicle?" He gestured to the heap of scrap metal that used to be a luxury SUV. "Yes." The officer looked at his notes, then back at me. He lowered his voice, stepping closer to create a barrier of privacy between us and the crying drama unfolding at the ambulance. "Ms. Lamberton," the driver, Tiffany Lamberton, blew a 0.14 on the breathalyzer. "That is nearly twice the legal limit. We also found open containers in the vehicle." I closed my eyes. I knew it. "Furthermore," he continued, his voice hardening, "we have witness statements from the passengers. Apparently, they were live streaming the joyride on a social media platform up until the moment of impact. We have confiscated the phone as evidence. It shows the driver speeding and driving erratically while consuming alcohol." My stomach turned. They had broadcast their stupidity to the world. They had turned the destruction of my property into content. The officer paused, looking at me with a gaze that was heavy with implication. He knew what was happening. He had seen this family dynamic 1,000 times before. He looked at Tiffany, who was now wailing about how much her wrist hurt, and then he looked at me. "Ms. Lamberton, I need to ask you a very important question. The answer will determine how we proceed with this investigation." I nodded, my throat tight. Did you give Tiffany Lamberton permission to drive your vehicle tonight? The world seemed to stop spinning. The flashing lights slowed down. The noise of the radio chatter faded. If I said yes, Tiffany would still be charged with driving under the influence, but my insurance would likely be liable for everything. The car, the pole, the medical bills for her friends, and because she was drunk, the insurance might deny the claim anyway, leaving me personally on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But Tiffany would avoid the theft charge. She would avoid the felony. If I said no, it was grand theft auto. It was unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, combined with the DUI and the reckless endangerment. She was looking at prison time, real prison time. I felt a hand grip my upper arm. Hard. I looked down. Mom had appeared at my elbow. She must have sensed the danger, smelled the critical moment approaching like a shark smells blood. Her face was pale, her eyes wild and desperate. She leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear. She did not look at the officer. She looked only at me. "Hope," she whispered, her voice a hiss of pure panic. I looked at her. "She is your sister," Mom hissed. "She made a mistake, just a mistake." The officer was waiting. "Ms. Lamberton, did she have your keys with your consent?" Mom's grip tightened until I thought she might bruise the bone. Her eyes were pleading, begging, threatening. All the years of guilt, all the years of telling me to be the bigger person, to be the adult, to save Tiffany from herself, were compressed into this one look. "Say yes," Mom mouthed, the words barely audible. "Don't let her go to jail. Say you gave her the keys, please, for me." I looked at the wreckage of my car. I looked at the tire tracks that tore through the earth. I looked at Tiffany, who was peeking over Mom's shoulder. Her eyes not filled with remorse, but with expectation. She expected this. She expected the rescue. She expected me to lay my body down across the wire so she could walk over me without getting muddy. The officer's pen hovered over the paper. I took a breath. The air tasted of ozone and betrayal. "Ms. Lamberton." I looked at the officer, then I looked at my mother, and for the first time in my life, I did not immediately fold. I stood there, trapped in the amber of the moment, the weight of the decision crushing the air from my lungs. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room waiting area hummed with a sound that felt like it was drilling directly into my skull. It was a sterile, white noise that amplified the throbbing in my temples. I sat on a hard plastic chair, watching the clock on the wall tick past 4 a.m. The police officer had allowed me to come to the hospital before giving my official statement regarding the theft. He knew, and I knew, that the answer to his question, "Did she have permission?" would define the rest of Tiffany's life. He had given me an hour to decide whether to be a sister or a victim. When the nurse finally led us back to Tiffany's cubicle, the curtain was drawn halfway. My sister was lying in the hospital bed, a neck brace secured around her throat, and a small bandage on her forehead. She looked small. She looked fragile. It was a pose she had perfected over 2 decades. As soon as she saw Mom, the performance began. Mom Tiffany wailed, her voice cracking theatrically. "I am so sorry, I was just so scared." Mom rushed to the bedside, burying her face in the sheets, stroking Tiffany's hair. "It is okay, baby. It is okay. You are safe now. That is all that matters." I stood at the foot of the bed, my arms crossed over my chest. I felt like an observer behind a glass wall, watching a scene from a bad soap opera. "I just wanted to get some food," Tiffany sobbed, her eyes darting toward me, checking my reaction. I woke up and I was starving, and there was nothing in the house. I saw Hope's keys on the dresser. I thought she wouldn't mind. I thought she would want me to be safe in the big car instead of walking. I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. "You thought I would not mind?" I asked, my voice flat. "You thought I would not mind you taking an $85,000 vehicle while you were drunk, driving it 30 miles away to a party, and wrapping it around a telephone pole?" Tiffany flinched, shrinking back into the pillows. Mom shot me a look of pure venom. Stop it. Hope, Mom hissed. Can you not see she is in pain? She is traumatized. She is not traumatized. Mom, she is drunk. The police said she blew a .14. That is not getting food. That is a joyride. Tiffany started crying harder, loud, heaving sobs that shook the bed frame. I did not mean to crash. It was an accident. The deer ran out. There was no deer. Tiffany, I said, cutting her off. I saw the tire tracks. You were speeding, and your friends were live streaming it. Her face went white. The sobbing stopped instantly, replaced by a look of cold terror. You saw the video. The police have the phone, I said. The room went silent. The beeping of the heart monitor seemed to grow louder. Mom stood up slowly. She wiped her eyes and turned to me. Her face had shifted from maternal concern to the steely, irrational determination of a woman who was used to cleaning up messes that should not be cleaned. She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the corner of the room, away from the open curtain. Listen to me, she whispered, her voice trembling with intensity. You cannot tell them she stole it. I looked at her. Mom, she did steal it. If you say that, they will charge her with a felony. Grand theft auto. Do you know what that does to a person's record? She is only 25 years old. Hope, she is just a baby. If she gets a felony, she will never get a good job. Her life will be over before it even starts. Her life is her responsibility, I said, pulling my arm away. She is your sister. Mom's voice rose. Desperate. You have to help her. You have to tell them you gave her the keys. Tell them you let her borrow it. I let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. Mom, do you understand how insurance works? I do not care about the insurance. You should. I snapped. If I say I gave her permission, then I am liable. My insurance policy has a specific clause. If I knowingly lend my vehicle to an intoxicated driver, they can deny the claim, and even if they do not deny it based on that, the liability limits will be exhausted immediately by the damage to the pole and the medical bills for her friends. I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice. If I say I gave her permission, the insurance company walks away. I will be personally sued for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I will lose my savings. I could lose my condo. I will be paying for her mistakes for the next 20 years. Mom waved her hand dismissively, as if I were talking about a parking ticket. You are smart. You will figure it out. You have that fancy job. You can make more money, but Tiffany cannot make back time lost in prison. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, starting at my heart and freezing my veins. So that is it, I asked quietly. You are willing to bankrupt me to save her from the consequences of her own actions. You want me to set my life on fire to keep her warm. It is just money. Hope, Mom cried out, tears streaming down her face. It is just a car. She is flesh and blood. I looked at Tiffany. She was watching us. Her eyes dry now, calculating. She knew she was winning. She knew Mom was the ultimate trump card. I cannot do it, Mom. I cannot lie to the police. It is insurance fraud. It is a crime. Mom stared at me for a long moment. Then, a strange look crossed her face, a look of frantic invention. She took a deep breath and straightened her spine. Fine, she said. Then I will fix it. What I will tell them I was driving. I stared at her, unable to process the words. What I will tell them I took the keys. Mom said, talking faster now, building the lie in the air between us. I will tell them I took the car to go pick up Tiffany because she called me and said she was stranded. I will say I was driving back and I swerved to avoid a deer. Mom, that is insane. It works, she insisted, her eyes bright with delusion. I have a clean record. I have insurance. I will say I panicked and ran to get help. And Tiffany stayed with the car. Mom, the police found Tiffany in the driver's seat, I almost shouted. The airbags deployed on her. She has the bruises from the steering wheel. The paramedics treated her. And the witnesses her friends saw her driving. We can say she climbed into the driver's seat after I left. Mom grabbed my hands, squeezing them painfully. We can say her friends are lying because they are drunk. We can make this work. Hope. But I need you to back me up. Just say you gave me the keys. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me. I looked at the desperation etched into every line of her face. She was not just asking me to lie. She was preparing to walk into a police station and commit a serious crime. She was willing to risk jail time for herself, filing a false police report, obstructing justice, all to save Tiffany from a weekend of bad decisions. It was a sickness, a deep, rotting sickness that had infected our family for as long as I could remember, and suddenly, the anger vanished. It was replaced by a profound, hollow exhaustion. I realized then that there was no reasoning with her. There was no logic that could penetrate the shield of her enabling. To her, I was just a resource. I was the bank, the safety net, the collateral damage she was willing to accept. My car, the symbol of my 10 years of hard work, meant nothing to her. My integrity meant nothing. My financial future meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was Tiffany. Tiffany spoke up from the bed, her voice small and wheedling. Please, Hope, just let Mom do it. No one has to know. Just do not give them the dashcam footage. Okay, if you have that video, just delete it, please. For the family. For the family. I looked from my sister to my mother. They were a team, a united front of dysfunction. And I was the enemy because I held the truth. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a bridge engineer watching a structure exceed its load-bearing capacity, knowing that collapse is inevitable, and deciding to stop trying to hold it up with bare hands. I realized I did not have to fight them. I just had to let them destroy themselves. If I argued, I was the villain. If I refused, I was the cruel sister. But if I agreed, if I stepped back and let them tell their lie, the trap would set itself. Okay, I said softly. Mom blinked, surprised by my sudden capitulation. Okay, I nodded. I pulled my hands away from hers. If that is what you want to do, Mom, if you want to tell the police that you were driving, if you want to tell them I gave you the keys, go ahead. Mom let out a long breath, her shoulders sagging with relief. Oh, thank God. Thank you. Hope, you are doing the right thing. You will see. It will all blow over. She turned to Tiffany. See, I told you your sister would come through. Now, here's the story. I took the keys at 2:30 in the morning. I listened as she coached Tiffany on the timeline. I listened as they constructed a house of cards on a foundation of sand. I reached into my pocket and touched my phone. The app for the black box data was still open in the background. The cloud upload had finished 20 minutes ago. The footage was safe. The telemetry data speed, braking, seat sensors, weight distribution in the driver's seat was all backed up on 3 different servers. I am going to step out, I said, my voice calm, almost cheerful. I need to get some air before the officer comes back. You two get your story straight. Mom nodded, barely looking at me, already deep in the details of her fabrication. Go, go. I will handle the police. I walked out of the room and into the hallway. The air was still antiseptic and cold, but I felt a strange warmth in my chest. It was the warmth of burning bridges. I walked toward the exit. Where Officer Miller was waiting, I did not have to lie. I did not have to say a word. I just had to wait for Mom to open her mouth and seal her own fate. I took out my phone and sent a text to my lawyer. It was 3 words. It has started. The following morning, the air in the sheriff's department smelled of stale coffee and industrial floor cleaner. It was a scent that would forever remind me of the sound of a pen scratching against paper. Sealing a fate with black ink. I sat on a metal bench bolted to the floor, watching my mother. She was sitting at a desk across the room, leaning forward earnestly toward Officer Miller. She looked every inch the frazzled, concerned mother. She was wearing her Sunday cardigan, her hands clasped on the desk, her face washed clean of makeup to appear more vulnerable. I listened as she committed a felony. It was all a blur. Officer, she said, her voice trembling just the right amount. Tiffany called me. She was stranded. I took Hope's car because it was the first set of keys I saw. I was panicked. I just wanted to get my baby. Officer Miller did not look convinced. He was a man who had seen enough lies to recognize the cadence of one. He looked at the accident report on his screen. He looked at the photos of the driver's seat, which had been pushed all the way back to accommodate someone with longer legs than my 5'4" mother. He looked at the bruising on Tiffany's chest from the seatbelt. "So, you were driving," he repeated slowly. "And your daughter was in the passenger seat." "Yes," Mom said. "And you swerved to miss a deer." "Yes, a big buck. It jumped right out, and that is why the vehicle left the road at 60 miles per hour in a 35 zone." "I was panicked," Mom said again, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. "I am not used to such a powerful car. It just got away from me." The officer tapped his pen on the desk. The rhythmic click, click, click was the only sound in the room. He looked over at me. I maintained a neutral expression. My hands folded in my lap. I was the picture of the supportive daughter, the silent observer. I was also a vault containing the digital truth that would eventually destroy this narrative. "Fine," Officer Miller said finally. He slid a piece of paper toward her. "This is your official statement. Signing this means you swear under penalty of perjury that the information contained herein is true and correct. False reporting is a crime. Mrs. Lamberton?" Mom did not hesitate. She picked up the pen. Her hand did not shake. She signed her name with a flourish. Cementing the lie into the legal record, I watched the ink dry. It was done. She had officially claimed responsibility for the crash. She had claimed responsibility for the vehicle, and most importantly, she had claimed responsibility for the liabilities attached to it. We left the station in silence. Mom let out a long, ragged breath as we stepped into the parking lot sunlight. "That was close," she whispered. "But we did it. Tiffany is safe." I unlocked the doors of her battered sedan. "You are safe from the police, Mom. But you are not safe from the math." She waved her hand dismissively. "Insurance will handle the rest." "That is what we pay premiums for." I did not correct her. Not yet. Back at the house, the atmosphere had shifted from panic to a sort of conspiratorial arrogance. Tiffany was sprawled on the living room couch, her neck brace looking like a prop she had forgotten to take off. She had her phone in one hand and a tablet in the other. "Did you delete the post?" Mom asked, hanging up her coat. "Gone," Tiffany said, not looking up, and I messaged Kayla and Justin. I told them if they say anything different from Mom's story, they can forget about me paying for their hospital copays. They agreed. I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Tiffany smirked. "Justin is scared of his own shadow. He will say whatever I tell him to, and Kayla is broke. She will shut up." I slipped my hand into my pocket and felt the cool metal of my phone. The voice memo app had been running since we walked through the front door. Every word, every admission, every casual disregard for the law was being captured. I walked into the kitchen and started making tea. I needed to keep my hands busy. I needed to look normal. Inside, my mind was running through a checklist of procedural horrors that they could not even imagine. Later that afternoon, I went up to my room and locked the door. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I did not log into my work email. Instead, I opened a secure browser and logged into a portal for my personal attorney, a man named Mr. Sterling who specialized in asset protection and civil litigation. I uploaded the dashcam footage. I uploaded the cockpit audio recording. I uploaded the screenshot of the valet mode data showing the time the car started and the weight of the driver. Then I typed a message. "Do not file the theft affidavit yet. Wait for the other shoe to drop. The policyholder has claimed responsibility. Let the claim proceed under her name for now. I want the denial to come from the insurance company first. Mr. Sterling replied 3 minutes later. "Understood. We are letting them walk into the trap. Be advised, if she claims she was driving, she is accepting liability for the passengers. What are her coverage limits?" I typed back. "State minimum, $25,000 for bodily injury per person, $50,000 per accident." "Ouch," Sterling replied. "Keep recording." The silence in the house over the next 2 days was heavy, but it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a held breath. Mom and Tiffany moved around with a forced lightness, acting as if the problem had been solved. They talked about what kind of car Tiffany should get next. They talked about Mom's bravery in the police station. They ignored me, mostly. I was the ghost in the machine, the person who paid the bills but was excluded from the inner circle of trust because I had hesitated to lie. Then, the letter arrived. It came on a Tuesday, delivered by a courier who required a signature. Mom signed for it, looking confused. It was a thick, heavy envelope from a law firm in the city, Blackwood Associates, personal injury attorneys. She opened it at the kitchen table. I was chopping vegetables for a dinner I had no appetite to eat. I watched her read. I saw the color drain from her face. It happened slowly, like a tide going out, leaving her skin gray and waxy. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mom, Tiffany asked, looking up from her magazine. "What is it?" Mom dropped the letter onto the table. Her hands were shaking so violently that they rattled against the wood. "They are suing us," she whispered. "Who, Kayla?" Mom said, her voice rising to a shriek. "Kayla is suing us." I put down the knife and wiped my hands on a towel. I walked over and picked up the letter. It was standard legal boilerplate, cold and aggressive. Redemand for compensation. Client Kayla Morris. Date of incident, January 25th. Nature of injury, cervical strain, emotional distress, potential long-term spinal trauma. I skipped to the bottom, to the bolded number. Demand for settlement, $500,000. $500,000. Mom gasped. She grabbed the edge of the table. Why? Why would she do this? "She is your friend." Tiffany. Tiffany looked stunned. "She texted me yesterday. She said she was cool. She said her neck just hurt a little bit." "People get very different when lawyers get involved," I said calmly, "and neck injuries are expensive. Pain and suffering multiplies the medical bills by 3 or 4 times. Mom spun around to face me. Her eyes were wild. "This is your fault," I blinked. "Excuse me, if you did not have that stupid, expensive car. None of this would have happened," she screamed. "If you drove a normal car like a normal person, they would not be coming after us for $500,000. They think we are rich because of that car." I stared at her. The logic was so twisted it was almost impressive. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice level, "the car does not matter. The driver matters. And according to the police report you signed yesterday, you are the driver. You are the one who crashed. You are the one responsible for the passengers." "But I was not driving," she shouted, forgetting that Tiffany was sitting right there. Tiffany shrank back. "Mom." "Shh. The neighbors. I do not care." Mom paced the kitchen, pulling at her hair. "Hope, you have to fix this. You have to pay them. You have money. You have that fancy job." I sat down at the table. "Mom, listen to me. I cannot pay them. I am not the one being sued. The letter is addressed to Brenda Lamberton, the driver of the vehicle at the time of the accident. But it was your car, and you told the police you were in control of it. You claimed possession. That makes you liable." Mom froze. She looked at the letter, then at me. Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for an exit. "My insurance," she stammered. "My insurance will pay it. That is why I have it." I folded my hands. "Mom, who is your carrier Safeway General?" She said, "I have been with them for 20 years. And what are your liability limits?" She looked blank. "Limits. I have full coverage. Full coverage usually refers to the car itself." "Mom, liability is different. Liability is what pays for the other people you hurt. Most standard policies, especially the budget ones like yours, have the state minimum limits." I pulled out my phone and did a quick search for the state statutes. "Here," I said, turning the screen toward her, "the minimum liability limit for bodily injury in this state is $25,000 per person." Mom stared at the screen. The number seemed to mock her. "25,000, she whispered, but they want 500,000. "Exactly," I said. "So what happens to the rest? What happens to the other 475,000? I looked at her. I looked at the kitchen we were standing in. I looked at the walls of the house she had lived in for 30 years. The house I had helped her pay off so she could have a secure retirement. They take it from your assets. Mom, they garnish your wages. They put a lien on your bank accounts. And they force the sale of your home. Mom let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. She collapsed into a chair. No, no, they cannot take the house. This is my home. They can, and they will, if a judge awards that judgment, and since you signed a confession stating you were driving the car that caused the injury, it is an open and shut case. You admitted fault. There is no defense. Mom put her head in her hands. Her shoulders shook. Tiffany sat silently, her face pale. She was realizing that the shield she had used her mother was not made of steel. It was made of paper, and it was burning. Wait, Tiffany said suddenly. Her voice was sharp. Hope, you have insurance too. You have the expensive insurance for the rich car. Why cannot your insurance pay? I turned to my sister, because, Tiffany, my insurance follows the car, but it also follows the contract. If I was driving, or if I had given permission to a responsible driver, my policy would cover it. My policy limits are $1 million. Mom's head snapped up. $1 million. Then use it. Tell them to use yours. I cannot, I said softly. Why not? Mom screamed. Because of the unauthorized driver clause and the intoxication clause. If I claim the car was taken without permission, which is the truth, my insurance denies the liability claim for the passengers because the vehicle was stolen. If I claim I gave permission to you, Mom, my insurance might cover it as a permissive use claim. Then do that, Mom begged. Say you gave me permission. But there is a problem, I continued, my voice dropping to a chill whisper. My insurance company will investigate. They will look at the black box data. They will see the seat position. They will see the weight sensor data. They will know a 120-pound woman was driving, not a 160-pound woman. They will know you are lying. And if they catch us lying to get them to pay a $500,000 claim, that is insurance fraud on a massive scale. That is federal prison time for all of us. The room fell into a dead silence. The trap I had mentioned in my head had just snapped shut. They were pinned. If they stuck to their lie that Mom was driving, Mom would lose her house to the lawsuit because her insurance was insufficient. If they admitted Tiffany was driving, Mom would go to jail for filing a false police report, and Tiffany would go to jail for the theft and DUI, and they would still be sued. And I would still not cover it because it was a crime. They were checkmated, and they did not even know the game had started days ago. I am going to lie down, Mom whispered. She looked gray. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. She stood up shakily and walked out of the kitchen. Tiffany stayed at the table. She looked at me with a mixture of fear and hatred. You are enjoying this, aren't you? She spat. I picked up the knife and resumed chopping the carrots. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud against the cutting board was the only answer I gave her. Later that evening, I walked into the living room to retrieve a glass of water. The room was empty. Tiffany had gone upstairs to sulk, but she had left her iPad on the coffee table. It lit up as I walked by. A notification popped up on the lock screen. I stopped. I knew I shouldn't look, but I was done with ethics. I was done with privacy. I was in the business of survival now. I pressed the home button. Tiffany never used a passcode. She was too lazy to type 4 digits. The screen opened to her messages app. She was texting someone named Brad. Her ex-boyfriend. I scrolled up. Brad. So you totaled the new whip, LMAO. Tiffany. Yeah, it is gone. Completely wrecked. Brad. Are you in trouble, Tiffany? Nah, Mom took the fall. She told the cops she was driving. I'm in the clear. Brad. Damn, your mom is a real one. What about your sister, the rich bitch Tiffany? She is so stupid. She is just standing there letting it happen. She is terrified of Mom. She is going to pay for everything anyway. I am going to make her buy me a new car once this blows over. She owes me for the stress. Brad lol. Get that bag. Tiffany. Watch me. She is a doormat. I own her. I stared at the words. She is a doormat. I own her. Something inside me. Some last lingering thread of sisterly affection, some tiny fiber of hope that she might actually be sorry. Finally snapped. It didn't make a sound, it just disintegrated. I took my phone out of my pocket. I took a photo of the conversation. Then I put the iPad back exactly where it was. I walked up the stairs to my room. I felt incredibly light, the burden of guilt, the burden of obligation, the burden of trying to save people who did not want to be saved. It was all gone. I picked up my phone and dialed. Mr. Sterling. Hope he answered. It is late. Change of plans. James, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice I used when I told a contractor to tear down a wall because the foundation was flawed. What is happening? File the affidavit. I said, the theft affidavit. James asked, Are you sure? Once we file this, there is no going back. You are accusing your sister of a felony, and you are exposing your mother to perjury charges. I know. I said, Are you sure you want to do this? I looked at the closed door of my bedroom. I thought about the text message. I own her. I am sure. I said, File it. Send it to the police. Send it to the insurance company. And send a copy to Blackwood Associates. There was a pause on the line. Then James spoke, his tone professional and sharp. Understood. I will file it first thing in the morning. The nuclear option is engaged. Thank you. James. I hung up. I turned off the light and got into bed. For the first time since I had arrived in Silver Creek, I fell asleep instantly. The silence in the house was no longer a threat. It was the quiet before the execution. I returned to the city on a rental train that smelled of antiseptic and damp wool. My apartment was exactly as I had left it cool. Silent and impeccably organized. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the skyline, a grid of lights that represented order and logic. It was a stark contrast to the suffocating, emotional humidity of Silver Creek. I left my mother and sister behind, confident in their delusion that they had successfully navigated the legal system. They believed that because the police officer had accepted the statement, the matter was closed. They did not understand that the police report was just the opening move in a much longer, more ruthless game played by actuaries and algorithms. I was back at my desk at Vertex Design Group by 9 a.m. on Wednesday. I went through the motions of checking blueprints and approving irrigation schematics. But my mind was elsewhere. I was waiting for the phone call. I knew it would come. Insurance companies do not become billion-dollar industries by writing checks based on the word of a woman who drives a 15-year-old sedan and suddenly claims to have been piloting a high-performance luxury fortress. The call came at 11:30. Ms. Lamberton. This is David Vance. I am the senior fraud investigator for your insurance carrier. I swiveled my chair around to face the window. Hello, Mr. Vance. I have been expecting your call. There was a pause on the line. He had likely expected defensiveness or confusion. My calm demeanor threw him off balance for a second. Right, he said, regaining his professional footing. Ms. Lamberton, we have a significant discrepancy regarding the claim filed by your mother, Brenda Lamberton. She has stated she was the driver during the total loss incident. However, the biometric data does not add up. Go on. I said, the impact injuries on the driver, your mother, are virtually non-existent. Yet, the passenger, your sister Tiffany, presents with bruising consistent with a steering wheel impact, not a dashboard impact. Furthermore, the seat position was locked for a driver with an inseam of 32 inches. Your mother is, according to her medical records, 5'4". She would not have been able to reach the pedals. He paused, waiting for me to lie. He was giving me the rope. Mr. Vance, I said, keeping my voice even. My mother is trying to protect my sister. Tiffany was driving. My mother was not even in the car. Silence stretched across the line. This was not the conversation he usually had. Usually, family members conspired together. You are admitting that the affidavit filed by your mother is false, he asked, his voice sharpening. I am not admitting anything. Mr. Vance, I am stating a fact, and I can prove it. How I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my desk. My mother and sister are used to cars that are just mechanical boxes. They do not understand what the Centurion Obsidian is. They think it is just leather and horsepower. They do not know it is a rolling data center. I took a breath and continued. The vehicle is equipped with the Sentinel package. It has a 360-degree interior and exterior camera system. It has a cabin microphone array, and most importantly, it has an event data recorder that uploads to the cloud in real time via a dedicated satellite uplink whenever a collision is detected. The upload happens milliseconds after airbag deployment. I could practically hear Mr. Vance smiling on the other end of the line. Do you have access to this data? Ms. Lamberton. I do. I have not released it yet because I wanted to see what my family would do, but I'm looking at the file on my server right now. Send it to me, he said, immediately. I hung up and opened my laptop. I logged into the manufacturer's secure portal. The file was there. Time-stamped 3:17 in the morning on Sunday. The file size was massive. High-definition video, uncompressed audio, and a stream of telemetry data that detailed every mistake my sister had made. I clicked download. The progress bar filled up with satisfying speed. I opened the video file first. I needed to see it. I needed to witness the moment my property was destroyed. But more than that, I needed to witness the betrayal. The video opened. The interior of the SUV was illuminated by the soft, ambient LED lighting I had customized to a cool blue. Tiffany was in the driver's seat. The camera angle was crystal clear, capturing her face in sharp relief. She looked deranged. She was holding a bottle of vodka between her legs. Her friends were in the back, laughing and screaming. The music was deafeningly loud. Tiffany took a swig from the bottle and slammed her hand on the steering wheel. "Look at this thing," she shouted over the bass. "It is like a spaceship." One of the friends in the back leaned forward. "Your sister is going to kill you." Tiffany laughed. It was an ugly, wet sound. Screw her. She thinks she is so special with her big job and her big car. Look at me. I am driving it better than she ever could. It is my toy now. She swerved, the tires screeching. The telemetry data on the side of the screen showed her speed hitting 80 miles per hour. Rich bitch thinks she is better than us. Tiffany slurred, her eyes glazing over. She comes home and flashes her money. Well, guess what? I am the one enjoying it. Then, the world tilted. The camera caught the moment she lost control. Her eyes went wide. She overcorrected. The car spun. The scream from the back seat was cut short by a sound that was less like a crash and more like an explosion. The screen went black for a fraction of a second, then switched to the emergency backup power. The cabin was filled with white dust from the airbags. The silence was absolute. Then, the groans started. I watched as Tiffany struggled to move. She was pinned. The door was jammed. She reached for her phone with a shaking hand. She did not call 911. She did not call me. She called Mom. The audio picked up both sides of the conversation because Tiffany put it on speakerphone, her hands shaking too hard to hold it to her ear. Mom, I crashed. Oh my God. Brenda's voice filled the cabin, tinny and panicked. Where are you? Are you hurt? I wrecked it. Mom, it is totaled. Hope is going to kill me. The police are coming. Listen to me. Mom screamed through the phone. Listen to me. Tiffany, get out of the driver's seat. I cannot. The bag is in the way. You have to climb into the back. Tell Kayla to get out. I am coming. I will be there in 10 minutes. When the police get there, tell them I was driving. Tell them I went to find help. But Mom, do it. Do not let them find you behind that wheel. The call ended. I watched Tiffany try to unbuckle her seatbelt. She thrashed against the deflated airbag, but the frame of the car had buckled inward. She was trapped. She could not move. She gave up and started crying, putting her head on the steering wheel, the exact position the police found her in. I paused the video. That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. It was not just a crash. It was a conspiracy. My mother had not made a split-second decision at the police station to protect her daughter. She had orchestrated the crime from the moment the crash happened. She had instructed Tiffany to alter the scene of an accident. She had instructed her to lie. I felt a cold sensation in my stomach, but it was not nausea. It was the feeling of surgical precision. I was cutting out a tumor. I made 3 copies of the data package. The first email went to Mr. Sterling, my attorney. Subject: theft affidavit supporting evidence. The second email went to Officer Miller at the Sheriff's Department. Subject: supplemental evidence. Case number 49221. The third email was drafted to Mr. Vance at the insurance company before I could hit send on the third email. My phone rang. It was Mom. I stared at the screen. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I wanted to hear her. I wanted to hear the voice of the woman who had commanded her daughter to commit a crime, just to see if it sounded any different now. I answered. Hello, Mom. Hope. Thank God you answered. Listen, we have a problem. What kind of problem? I asked. It is the Morris family. Kayla's parents. They are not backing down on the lawsuit. They say $50,000 is not enough. They want a down payment of good faith, or they're going to file the papers tomorrow. I closed my eyes, and they said if we give them $20,000 cash right now, under the table, they will sign a waiver and drop the lawsuit. They just want to cover the immediate medical bills. $20,000. I repeated, yes, I need you to wire it. Hope, I know you have it. I know you have savings. You want me to wire $20,000 to pay off a blackmailer because you lied to the police. It is not blackmail, Mom shouted. It is a settlement, and it saves us all. If they sue, they take the house. Hope, do you want your mother to be homeless? I looked at the paused video on my laptop screen. I looked at Tiffany's face, twisted in a sneer, calling me a rich bitch. Mom, I said, I am not sending you any money. There was a stunned silence. What I said, no, I am not paying $20,000. I am not paying 20 cents. How can you be so selfish? She screamed. Her voice cracked, turning into a guttural roar. You have everything. You have that high-rise apartment. You have your designer clothes. You have your money, and you will not help your own family. You are cold-blooded. You are a monster. I am not the one who drank vodka and drove a stolen car into a pole. Mom, it was an accident. She is your sister. She is a thief. And you are an accomplice. Don't you dare speak to me like that. I am your mother. I gave you life, and now you are trying to take mine to pay for hers. I said calmly, you ungrateful little brat. If you do not send that money, do not ever bother coming back here. You are dead to us. Do you hear me? Dead. I listened to her breathing, harsh and ragged on the other end. I listened to the woman who had raised me, the woman I had tried so hard to please, the woman I had bought a house for. I realized she did not see me. She never had. She only saw a resource. She only saw a line of credit. You are right, Mom, I said softly. I am dead to you, because the Hope who used to clean up your messes died the moment Tiffany took my keys. I hung up the phone. I did not cry. My hands were steady. My heart rate was normal. I turned back to my laptop. The email to Mr. Vance was waiting. I attached the files. I attached the video. I attached the audio of the phone call where Mom orchestrated the cover-up. I typed a new subject line, evidence of liability release, unauthorized driver/fraudulent claim. I moved the cursor to the send button. For a second, just a split second, I thought about Christmas mornings. I thought about the time Mom made me soup when I had the flu. I thought about the tiny, microscopic moments of love that had kept me tethered to this family for 34 years. Then I looked at the video again. I looked at the timestamp, 3:17 in the morning, the time my sister decided my life was worth less than her joyride. I clicked send. The email whooshed away, carrying the truth into the servers of the insurance company. It was done. I had just nuked my family from orbit, and the only thing I felt was the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The phone rang 11 minutes after I clicked send. I had timed it. I estimated it would take 3 minutes for the email to route through the servers, another 2 for the notification to ping on my mother's iPad, which I knew she kept on the kitchen table with the volume up loud, and perhaps 6 minutes for the horror to fully metabolize in her bloodstream. I was sitting in my office, a cup of green tea steaming gently beside my keyboard. The city view outside was gray and indifferent, a stark contrast to the firestorm I had just ignited 300 miles away. I looked at the caller ID, Mom. I let it ring 3 times. 1, 2, 3. I picked up the receiver and held it to my ear. I did not say hello. I just listened. The sound coming from the other end was not human. It was a high-pitched, vibrating frequency of sheer panic, a noise that sounded like a tea kettle screaming just before it boiled over. "You sent it!" she shrieked. Her voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You sent it to them. Good morning." "Mom," I said. "Delete it," she screamed, the words tearing at her throat. "Delete it right now. Call them back. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them it was a prank, Hope." Oh my God. "Do you know what you have done?" I swiveled my chair slightly, looking at the framed degree on my wall. I knew exactly what I had done. I cannot delete it. "Mom, it is on the server of a Fortune 500 insurance company. It is on the secure evidence portal of the county sheriff's department. Once it is sent, it is part of the permanent record. It is out of my hands." There was a crashing sound on her end, like a chair being overturned. I could hear Tiffany in the background, crying, a low, rhythmic keen of terror. "You are trying to kill us," Mom sobbed. "You are trying to put your own sister in jail." "Why? Why are you doing this? We are family." I leaned into the phone, my voice dropping to a register that was colder than the glass of my office window. "Family does not frame family for felonies. Mom, you went to the police station. You signed a sworn affidavit stating you were the driver. That is perjury. That is filing a false police report. And when you called the insurance company and tried to claim coverage for a crash caused by an unauthorized, intoxicated driver, that became insurance fraud." I paused to let the words sink in. "Those are crimes. Mom, real crimes, with real prison sentences. I did not commit them. You did. Tiffany did. All I did was turn on the lights." "You have to fix it," she begged, her anger collapsing into desperate bargaining. "You have money. You have lawyers. Call your lawyer. Tell him to stop it. We will pay you back. I will sell the house. I will do anything. Just stop them from coming. It is too late for the house." "Mom," I said, "you cannot sell the house to pay me back because the insurance company is going to put a lien on it to recover their investigation costs. And besides, I do not want your money. I want the truth to be on the record." "You are a monster," she screamed, the vitriol returning as the desperation failed. "I wish I had never given birth to you. If you do this, if you let them arrest your sister, you are no daughter of mine. Do not ever call me again. Do not ever come to this house. You are dead to me." The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic. 10 years ago, those words would have shattered me. 5 years ago, they would have made me cry. Today, they just felt like a confirmation of a contract that had been terminated long ago. "Mom," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I stopped being your daughter the moment you looked me in the eye at the crash site and asked me to take the fall for Tiffany. I stopped being your daughter when you decided my life was disposable currency to purchase her freedom. You do not have a daughter named Hope anymore. You only have a co-defendant named Tiffany." I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking slightly, but not from sadness. It was the adrenaline of the kill. An hour later, my personal attorney, James Sterling, called me. His tone was professional, but I could hear the undercurrent of shock in his voice. "Hope," he said, "it is blowing up. Tell me." I said, "The sheriff's department just issued arrest warrants for both Brenda Lamberton and Tiffany Lamberton. Based on the video evidence you provided, they are charging Tiffany with grand theft auto, driving under the influence, and reckless endangerment." And my mother, James, paused. "They are throwing the book at her. Hope. They are charging her with obstruction of justice, filing a false police report, and conspiracy to commit fraud, because the audio clearly captures her instructing Tiffany to alter the crime scene. They are treating her as the mastermind of the cover-up." I closed my eyes, visualizing the scene at the house, the sirens approaching, the neighbors peering through their blinds. There is more. James continued. The insurance company, Safeway General, has already reacted. They are not just denying the claim. Their legal department has contacted the district attorney. They are filing a civil suit against your mother for attempted insurance fraud. They are also seeking to recoup the costs of the investigation. And what? And because your mother signed that affidavit claiming she was driving. She legally accepted liability for the injuries to the passengers. Now that the fraud is exposed, the insurance is voiding her policy retroactively. That means she has zero coverage. The Morris family. The ones suing for $500,000. They are going to get a default judgment against her assets. She is going to lose everything. Hope, the house, her retirement, her car, everything. I looked out at the city. The sun was trying to break through the clouds, casting a weak, pale light on the concrete canyons. Is there any blowback on me, I asked. James let out a short breath. No, you are clear. In fact, by providing the evidence proactively, you have immunized yourself against any accusation of collusion. You are the whistleblower. You are the victim. My insurance contacts say your carrier is likely to waive your deductible as a gesture of goodwill, considering you saved them $1 million payout. Thank you. James, keep me posted. I sat there for a long time. I tried to feel guilty. I tried to summon the ghost of the dutiful daughter who used to drive 3 hours every weekend to fix her mother's leaky faucets. But she did not answer. She was gone, 300 miles away. The reality was crashing down on 42 Elm Street. I did not need to be there to see it. I could imagine it with the clarity of a photograph. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table. The phone was dead in her hand. The email from the insurance company was still open on the screen, a formal notification that her policy had been terminated for cause. Effective immediately, she would be looking across the room at Tiffany. For 25 years. Mom had looked at Tiffany and seen a porcelain doll that needed protecting. She had seen a victim of circumstance. She had seen a fragile flower that just needed a little more water, a little more money, a little more forgiveness to finally bloom. But now, as the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder with every second, the veil was finally ripped away. Mom would look at Tiffany and see her for what she really was. She would see the 25-year-old woman who had stolen a car out of jealousy. She would see the drunk driver who had laughed while destroying an $85,000 machine. She would see the coward who had begged her mother to commit a felony rather than face the consequences of her own actions. She would see the person who had cost her other daughter. The daughter who paid the bills. The daughter who was reliable. The daughter who had tried to warn her. Mom stood up. Her legs felt like lead. She walked over to the window and looked out. 2 police cruisers were pulling into the driveway. The lights were flashing, blue and red, reflecting off the siding of the house she was about to lose. She turned back to Tiffany. Tiffany was frantically typing on her phone. Probably deleting messages. Probably trying to find another scapegoat, another angle. She looked up and saw the police cars. Her face went white. Mom, Tiffany screamed, jumping up. They are here. What do we do? You have to talk to them. Tell them it is a mistake. Tell them Hope is lying. Mom stared at her, for the first time in her life. Brenda Lamberton did not move to shield her child. She did not formulate a plan. She did not reach for her checkbook. She just stood there, paralyzed by the weight of her own enabling. She realized, with a clarity that was agonizing, that she had dug this grave with her own hands. She had handed Tiffany the shovel every single time, and now there was no one left to pull them out. The knock on the door was loud and authoritative. "Open up, Sheriff's Department." Tiffany ran to Mom and grabbed her arm, shaking her. "Mom, do something. Don't let them take me." Mom pulled her arm away. She looked down at where Tiffany's fingers had gripped her sleeve. She smoothed the fabric. "There is nothing to do." "Tiffany," Mom whispered. Her voice was hollow. "Stripped of all hope. It is over." She walked past her sobbing daughter and opened the front door. The officer standing there was not Officer Miller. It was a deputy holding a pair of handcuffs. "Brenda Lamberton," he asked. "Yes, she said. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, filing a false police report, and obstruction of justice. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Mom turned around. She felt the cold steel click around her wrists. It was a sensation of finality. Behind her, Tiffany began to scream. It was a high, thin sound of a child who realizes the adults have left the room. No, it wasn't me. It was her. She told me to do it. The second officer stepped past Mom and walked toward Tiffany. "Tiffany Lamberton, you are under arrest for grand theft auto and driving under the influence. Hands behind your back." Mom was led down the walkway toward the cruiser. She did not look back. She did not look at the neighbors who had gathered on their lawns, whispering and pointing. She did not look at the empty spot where my car used to be. She looked straight ahead at the gray sky. She was thinking about the phone call. She was thinking about my voice. "I stopped being your daughter when you decided my life was disposable." She realized then that she had not just lost a car or a house. She had lost the only thing in her life that had ever been real, and she had traded it for a lie that had just crumbled into dust. As the officer pushed her head down to guide her into the back seat of the cruiser, she saw Tiffany being dragged out of the house in handcuffs, kicking and screaming, blaming everyone but herself, and for the first time. Mom didn't feel the urge to comfort her. She felt a strange, cold detachment. A crack had formed in the foundation of her love, a fissure that was rapidly widening into a chasm. The car door slammed shut, sealing her in. The engine roared to life, and in the silence of the police car, separated from her golden child by a plexiglass divider, Brenda Lamberton began to cry. Not for Tiffany, but for the daughter she had driven away, and for the fool she saw in the rearview mirror. The legal system is not a swift hammer. It is a slow, grinding millstone. In the days following the arrests, the frantic energy of the crash site and the screaming phone calls dissipated, replaced by the suffocating, bureaucratic silence of consequences. I stayed in the city, monitoring the disintegration of my family through the dispassionate updates of my attorney, James Sterling. He was the filter through which I viewed the wreckage, stripping away the emotional manipulation and leaving only the cold, hard facts. The first fact was a revelation that surprised even me. Tiffany was denied bail. When the prosecutor ran her background check, a red flag popped up from a neighboring county. 2 years ago, Tiffany had been arrested for a driving under the influence charge. She had pleaded it down to reckless driving with a suspended sentence and 2 years of probation. A condition of that probation was absolute sobriety and no further brushes with the law. By getting behind the wheel of my Centurion drunk, crashing it, and then attempting to pin the crime on our mother, she had not just committed new crimes. She had violated the terms of her existing freedom. The judge, seeing a pattern of escalating recklessness and a flight risk, remanded her to the county detention center. Mom, on the other hand, was released on her own recognizance. She had no prior record. She was a 60-year-old widow with deep ties to the community. The court saw her not as a mastermind, but as a pathetic figure, a mother trying to fall on a sword for a child who did not deserve it. But the charges stuck. Obstruction of justice, filing a false police report, conspiracy. She was free to go home, but she had no home to go back to. Not really. The phone calls started immediately after her release. I let them go to voicemail. I listened to them later, sitting in my office with a glass of wine, analyzing the shift in her tone. "Hope, please. I need $10,000 for a retainer. The public defender says I might go to jail. You have to help me. Hope, they are keeping Tiffany. She is scared. She is in a cell with criminals. Please, just post her bond. It is $50,000. You have that much in your retirement account. I know you do. Hope, why are you doing this? We are your family." I did not pick up. I did not reply. I had drawn a line in the sand, and for the first time in my life, I was not going to scuff it out with my own heel just to make them comfortable. Then, the inevitable happened. To pay for a private criminal defense attorney because Mom refused to trust the public defender she had to leverage the only asset she had left. The house, it was the house I had grown up in, the house where I had learned to walk, where I had studied for my SATs, where I had hidden in my room to escape Tiffany's tantrums. It was the house I had paid off for her 3 years ago, writing a check for $112,000 so she could live debt-free. She took out a high-interest emergency equity loan against it. She signed the papers with a shaking hand, effectively throwing my gift into a furnace to keep Tiffany warm for a few more months. When I heard about this from James, I felt a strange, dull ache. It was not surprise. It was the finality of loss. That house was my last tangible connection to her, my last attempt to buy her security. She had liquidated it in a heartbeat. 2 weeks after the arrest. My phone rang. The caller ID said County Detention Center. I stared at it. I knew I should let it ring, but curiosity is a powerful vice. I wanted to hear her. I wanted to hear what she sounded like when the safety net was finally cut. I accepted the charges. "Hello, Tiffany," I said. There was a pause, filled with the static of the prison line and the distant shouting of other inmates. "You bitch," she hissed. Her voice was raw, stripped of its usual girlish charm. "You actually put me in here. I did not put you there. Tiffany, you drove yourself there. At 80 miles per hour. I am in a cage," she screamed, the sound distorting over the line. "The food is rot. The women in here are crazy. I am scared. Hope. And you are sitting in your penthouse drinking lattes. I am sitting in my office working." I corrected her. "Working to pay for the car you destroyed." "It is just a car," she shrieked. "Why do you care more about a stupid piece of metal than your own sister? You are so selfish. You always have been. You hoard your money. You judge us. You look down on us. And now you are letting me rot in here over an accident." I listened to her rewrite history. It was fascinating, in a morbid way. In her mind, she was the victim of my greed, not the perpetrator of a crime. It wasn't an accident. "Tiffany, it was a choice." "Whatever. Just get me out." "Mom says you won't give her the money. Send the money." "Hope, if you don't, I swear to God, when I get out of here, when you get out of there," I said calmly, cutting her off, "you will be a convicted felon. You will have a record, and you will be nobody's problem but your own." She started cursing then, a stream of filth that would have made a sailor blush. I hung up, but her words stuck with me. "It is just a car." I needed to end this. I needed to say it to her face, one last time, so that the ghost of my guilt could finally be laid to rest. I drove to the detention center the next Saturday. The facility was a gray concrete block surrounded by razor wire, sitting in the middle of a desolate field. The waiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. I sat among the other visitors' wives, mothers, children, all waiting to see the people who had disappointed them when they called my name. I walked through the metal detector, the heavy steel doors clanging shut behind me with a sound of finality. I sat in the visitation booth. A thick sheet of scratched plexiglass separated me from the other side. Tiffany was let in. She looked terrible. The detention center did not allow makeup. Her skin was sallow and broken out. Her roots were showing, a dark inch of natural brown claiming the bleached blonde. She wore an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. She looked stripped. She looked like the child she had never grown out of. She sat down and picked up the phone receiver. She did not look at me. She looked at the floor. "You came to gloat," she muttered. I picked up my receiver. "No, I came to say goodbye." She looked up then, her eyes narrowing. "What, I am changing my number?" "Tiffany, I am moving. You will not know where I live. This is the last time we will ever speak." She laughed, a harsh, dry bark. "You cannot do that. Mom needs you. I need you." I leaned forward, pressing my hand against the cool plastic. "You asked me on the phone why I care more about a car than my sister," I said softly. "I want to answer that." She rolled her eyes. "Here we go. The lecture. It is not about the medal. Tiffany, it is about the time. I paused, waiting for her to look at me. When she finally did, I held her gaze. That car cost $85,000. I make good money, but that is still a lot. After taxes, after rent, after living expenses. It took me 10 years to save that amount of disposable income. 10 years of working 60-hour weeks. 10 years of missing parties, missing holidays, eating tuna sandwiches at my desk, dealing with screaming clients and incompetent contractors. That car was 10 years of my life, stored in the form of a machine. I watched her face. She was listening, despite herself. You took those 10 years. I continued, my voice trembling slightly with the weight of the truth. And you destroyed them in 10 minutes. You drank a bottle of vodka, laughed about it, and drove 10 years of my life into a telephone pole because you wanted to feel important for a night. I took a deep breath. You did not just steal a car. Tiffany, you stole my time. You stole my labor. And then, when you crashed, you tried to steal my future by asking me to commit a felony to save you. You wanted me to go to prison so you could keep playing the victim. Tiffany's lip quivered. She looked away. It was an accident, she mumbled. But the conviction was gone. It was not an accident. I said, it was theft, and I am not destroying the rest of my life to fix yours. I am done paying for you. I hung up the phone. Wait, she shouted, her voice muffled by the glass. She slammed her hand against the barrier. Hope, wait, Mom is losing the house. You have to help her. I stood up. I looked at her one last time, a 25-year-old woman in an orange jumpsuit, screaming at a window, still believing that if she screamed loud enough, someone would come and fix it. I turned and walked away. I did not look back. Outside, the air tasted sweet. It tasted of freedom, but the tragedy was far from over. It was just shifting venues. The following week, the civil lawsuits were filed. Kayla Morris and the other passenger, a boy named Justin, were not content with being victims of an accident. They smelled blood. They had lawyers who worked on contingency, and they knew that while Tiffany was broke, Brenda Lamberton owned a home. The lawsuit named both of them. Negligence, entrustment of a vehicle to an intoxicated person. Premises. Liability. They went after everything. Mom called me in a panic, using a neighbor's phone because her service had been cut off. They want the house. Hope, she sobbed. They are putting a lien on it. I can't sell it. I can't refinance. I know. Mom, I said, I tried to sell the jewelry. She rambled, her voice manic. I took your grandmother's ring to the pawn shop. They only gave me $400. It is not enough. It is like trying to bail out the Titanic with a teaspoon. It is over. Mom, I said gently, you have to let it go. I cannot let it go. It is my home. It is all I have. You had a daughter. I said, you had two. You chose to sacrifice the solvent one to save the insolvent one. This is the math. Mom, it always balances out in the end. She hung up on me. I learned later, from neighbors and the small-town gossip mill that eventually reached me, about the slow, agonizing collapse of Brenda Lamberton's world. With Tiffany in jail and me gone, Mom was alone in the house on Elm Street. The silence must have been deafening. She began to wander the rooms. She went into Tiffany's bedroom, a shrine to a girl who refused to grow up. Clothes were piled on the floor, expensive clothes that Mom had paid for by scrimping on groceries. Makeup cluttered the vanity, high-end brands that Mom had never bought for herself. She opened Tiffany's closet, hidden in the back, behind a stack of shoeboxes. She found the stash, empty vodka bottles, dozens of them. Mom had spent years telling herself that Tiffany just liked to party, that she was just spirited. She had defended Tiffany to the neighbors, to the church group, to me. She is just young. She is just having fun. But looking at the pile of glass bottles, seeing the sheer volume of the addiction she had subsidized, the blinders finally fell off. She realized that every time she had given Tiffany money for gas or clothes or books, she had been buying these bottles. She realized that the DUI 2 years ago was not a misunderstanding as Tiffany had claimed. It was a warning shot that Mom had ignored. She sat on the edge of Tiffany's bed, holding an empty bottle of cheap vodka. She looked around the room. The paint was peeling. The carpet was stained. The house was falling apart because all the money for repairs had gone to Tiffany. And then she thought of me. She thought of the checks I used to send, the new roof I had paid for, the way I had quietly handled the bills, the insurance, the taxes. She thought of the car I drove, not a gift from a rich husband, but a trophy of my own hard work. She had called me selfish. She had called me a monster. But I was the only one who had ever actually tried to help her by telling her the truth. And she had thrown me away. She sat there as the sun went down, casting long shadows across the dusty floor. The house groaned, the timber settling into the earth. It was a sound of decay. She was 60 years old. She was facing criminal charges. She was about to lose her home to a lawsuit filed by her daughter's friends. She had no savings. She had no retirement, and she had no children left. She had lost the good one to betrayal. She had lost the bad one to the prison system. Brenda Lamberton sat in the dark, in the empty house that was no longer really hers, and for the first time, she did not pray for a miracle. She simply sat with the crushing weight of the bargain she had made. She had traded a diamond for a handful of glass, and now, even the glass was cutting her hands. The courtroom was a theater of the absurd, designed in mahogany and stale air. I sat in the witness box, a position that offered me a panoramic view of the destruction of the Lamberton family. To my left sat the jury, 12 strangers who looked bored and eager for lunch. To my right sat the judge, a woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many lies to be impressed by tears. And directly in front of me, at the defense table, sat the 2 women who had defined the first 3 decades of my life. Mom looked shrunken. Her cardigan hung loosely on her frame, and her hair, usually dyed a fierce chestnut, had grown out to reveal roots of defeatist gray. She stared at her hands, which were folded on the table in a posture of prayer, or perhaps surrender. Tiffany sat 2 feet away from her, but the emotional distance between them was measured in light years. My sister wore a blouse provided by her public defender, a modest navy blue thing that clashed with the orange jumpsuit she had been wearing in the holding cell. She looked clean, scrubbed, and terrified, but under the terror, I saw the glint of survival. It was the look of a rat cornered in a sinking ship, ready to climb over anything or anyone to keep its nose above water. The trial had been going on for 3 days. The evidence was overwhelming. The dashcam footage, the audio recordings, the telemetry data, and the black box report had all been entered into the record. The prosecution had built a fortress of facts that no amount of crying could breach. But Tiffany's lawyer, a weary public defender named Mr. Garris, had one final card to play. He had convinced Tiffany that her only chance for leniency, her only hope of avoiding a maximum sentence, was to paint herself as a victim of coercion. He called Tiffany to the stand. She walked up the short steps, her hand trembling as she swore on the Bible. She sat down, looking small and fragile. She looked at the jury, her eyes wide and watery. Ms. Lamberton, Mr. Garris began softly. Can you tell the court what happened on the night of January 24th? Tiffany took a shaky breath. She glanced at me, then at Mom. Then she looked at the jury. I did not want to drive, she whispered. Her voice was a masterpiece of hesitation. I knew I had been drinking. I told my mom I was not okay to drive. A ripple of confusion went through the courtroom. This was a new narrative. Go on, Mr. Garris encouraged. Mom told me to take the keys, Tiffany said, her voice gaining a little more strength. She said, Hope my sister would not mind. She said Hope owed us. She said I deserved to have a little fun. I told her I was scared. But Mom, she can be very controlling. She pushed the keys into my hand. She said if I did not go out and get food, I was useless. I felt my jaw tighten. It was a lie so bold, so inversive of reality, that it was almost impressive. And after the accident, Mr. Garris asked, who came up with the plan to lie to the police? It was her. Tiffany said, pointing a shaking finger at Mom. Mom was the one who told me to switch seats. I wanted to call 911. I wanted to tell the truth. But Mom screamed at me. She said if I told the truth, she would kick me out of the house. She said she would destroy me. I was terrified of her. I just did what I was told. I am just a victim of her manipulation. The courtroom was silent. I looked at Mom. She was not moving. She was not breathing. She was staring at Tiffany with an expression I had never seen on a human face before. It was the look of a person watching their own heart being ripped out of their chest and eaten by the one person they had sworn to protect. Mom Tiffany continued, tears now streaming down her face. Mom has always been the one pulling the strings. She made me lie. She made me steal. I am sorry. I just wanted my mom to love me. That was the spark. The silence in the room shattered. Liar. The word did not come from a throat. It came from the center of the earth. It was a guttural, animalistic roar that made the bailiff jump. Brenda Lamberton stood up. Her chair flew back and hit the rail behind her with a deafening crash. She was not the small, shrunken woman anymore. She was a pillar of pure, white-hot rage. Ms. Lamberton. Sit down, the judge barked, banging her gavel. But Mom did not sit down. She could not sit down. The dam had broken. 60 years of repression, 25 years of enabling, and months of humiliation came pouring out in a torrent of lava. You lying, ungrateful little parasite, Mom screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Tiffany. Her face was purple, veins bulging in her neck. Order in the court, the judge shouted. I starved for you, Mom shrieked, ignoring the judge, ignoring the bailiff moving toward her. I wore the same shoes for 5 years so you could have prom dresses. I remortgaged my house to pay for your lawyers. I lied to the police. I risked prison. I lost my reputation. I lost everything to save you. Tiffany shrank back in the witness stand, looking genuinely terrified now. Mom, stop. Do not tell me to stop. Mom's voice cracked, turning into a high, hysterical keen. You stole money from my purse when you were 12. You stole my engagement ring and pawned it for drugs. You stole your sister's college fund, and I covered for you every single time I said it was a mistake. I said you were learning bailiff. Remove the defendant, the judge ordered. 2 large officers grabbed Mom by the arms. She fought them. She thrashed like a wild animal caught in a trap. Her eyes locked on Tiffany. I cleaned up your vomit, Mom screamed as they dragged her backward. I paid off your drug dealers. I lied to your teachers. I drove you to rehab 3 times, and you sit there and say I forced you. You say I controlled you. I never controlled you. I was your slave. I was a slave to your selfishness. The officers were struggling to hold her. She possessed the strength of a woman who had nothing left to lose. And you, Mom spun her head, her eyes locking onto me. The courtroom froze. I sat in the witness box, my heart pounding against my ribs. Mom stopped struggling for a second. The rage in her eyes flickered and died, replaced by a sudden, crushing clarity. She looked at me, really looked at me. She saw the suit I was wearing. She saw the composed posture. She saw the daughter who had never asked for bail money, who had never stolen a dime, who had only ever tried to build a foundation for a family that insisted on living in quicksand. Hope, she whispered, her voice breaking into a sob that echoed off the high ceiling. I am so sorry. The bailiffs yanked her again, pulling her toward the side door. I backed the wrong horse, Mom wailed, her eyes still fixed on mine as she was dragged away. I threw away the diamond to keep the stone I should have chosen you. I am sorry. Hope, I am so sorry. Her voice was cut off as the heavy oak door slammed shut behind her. The silence that followed was absolute. The jury looked stunned. The judge looked pale. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, her hands hovering over the keys. All eyes turned to Tiffany. She was still sitting in the witness stand, but the mask of the victim had slipped. She did not look like a coerced child anymore. She looked like exactly what Mom had just described, a parasite that had finally killed its host. She looked small, mean, and exposed. The judge cleared her throat. It was a loud, harsh sound in the quiet room. Mr. Garris, the judge said, her voice icy. Do you have any further questions for your client? Tiffany's lawyer looked at Tiffany, then at the door where Mom had vanished, then back at the judge. He closed his folder. No, Your Honor, the defense rests. The snap had happened, and it had broken Tiffany's case into 1,000,000 unrecoverable pieces. The verdict came back in 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was held 3 days later. The atmosphere was different. The volatile energy was gone, replaced by a somber grimness. Mom was there, sitting quietly at the table. She looked hollowed out. She did not look at Tiffany. She did not look at me. She stared at the wood grain of the table as if it contained the secrets of the universe. The judge asked Tiffany if she had anything to say before sentencing. Tiffany stood up. She tried to cry again, but the jury was gone, and the judge was immune. I am sorry. Tiffany mumbled, I learned my lesson. The judge took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Ms. Lamberton, she said, looking down at Tiffany, in my 20 years on the bench, I have seen many tragedies, but rarely have I seen a defendant display such a profound lack of accountability. You stole a vehicle. You drove it while highly intoxicated. You endangered the lives of your passengers and the public, and when caught, you attempted to frame your own mother, a woman who, based on the outburst we witnessed, has clearly sacrificed her entire life for you. Tiffany looked down. Your mother's behavior in this court was unacceptable. The judge continued, but it was also illuminating. It showed the court the depth of the enabling that has created you. However, it also showed the court that you are not a victim. You are a predator. You preyed on your sister's success and your mother's love. The gavel came down. I sentence you to 3 years in the state penitentiary. You will serve a minimum of 18 months before being eligible for parole. Upon release, you will complete 500 hours of community service and 5 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay restitution to the victims. Tiffany gasped. 3 years. It was real. The steel bars were no longer a threat. They were a calendar. Then, the judge turned to Mom. Brenda Lamberton, please stand. Mom stood up slowly. She looked like a ghost. Mrs. Lamberton, the judge said, her voice softening slightly. You committed serious crimes. You lied to the police. You attempted to defraud an insurance company. You obstructed justice. Under the sentencing guidelines, you could face up to 5 years in prison. Mom nodded. I understand, Your Honor. However, the judge said, the court recognizes that your actions, while criminal, were born out of a misguided and toxic maternal instinct. You have already lost your reputation. You are facing financial ruin, and you have lost the relationship with your children. I believe you have already begun to serve your sentence. The judge leaned forward. I am sentencing you to 5 years of probation. You will pay a fine of $10,000. You will complete 200 hours of community service, and I am ordering mandatory family counseling, although I suspect it may be too late for that. Mom closed her eyes and let out a long, shuddering breath. No prison, but no freedom, either. The court is adjourned. I walked out of the courtroom before they could approach me. I needed air. I needed to breathe, but the punishment was not over. The legal system had finished its work, but the financial system was just beginning. The civil lawsuit from the Morris family hit Mom like a tsunami. With her insurance policy voided due to fraud, she had no defense. The Morris family was awarded a default judgment of $450,000 for Kayla's medical bills. Pain and suffering. Mom filed for Chapter 7. Bankruptcy 2 weeks later. It was a liquidation bankruptcy. The court trustee seized her assets to pay off creditors. The house on Elm Street was the first thing to go. I drove by it one last time before the auction. A for sale, bank-owned sign was pounded into the lawn I used to mow. The windows were dark. The grass was overgrown. The willow tree looked droopy and sad. I saw Mom sitting on the front steps. She was packing the last of her things into a cardboard box. She was not allowed to take the furniture. She was only allowed personal items. She looked up and saw my car. I was driving a rental. A sensible gray sedan while I waited for my new custom order to arrive. I rolled down the window. Mom stood up. She held a small box in her hands. She walked down the driveway, her steps heavy. She stopped a few feet from the car. She looked older than 60. She looked 80. Her face was lined with the map of her regrets. I did not know what to say. The anger was gone. The satisfaction was gone. There was just a vast, flat plain of sadness. I found this, Mom said, her voice raspy. She reached into the box and pulled out a framed photograph. It was a picture of me and Tiffany from 20 years ago. We were sitting in a plastic kiddie pool in the backyard. I was holding a hose, spraying water, and Tiffany was laughing, her mouth wide open, her eyes bright. We looked happy. We looked like sisters. I kept it. Mom said, it was the only thing I took from the wall. She handed it to me through the window. I took it. The glass was cold. Where will you go? I asked. I found a room, she said. A basement apartment in the city. It is small, but it is cheap. The manager at the grocery store said I can work extra shifts. She looked at the house one last time. I am sorry about the car. Hope, she said. And I am sorry about the keys. I nodded. I know. Mom. She looked at me, her eyes searching for something forgiveness. Maybe, or a bridge back to the past. But the bridge was gone. She had burned it, and I had let the ashes wash away. Take care of yourself. Mom, I said. You too, she whispered. I rolled up the window. I put the car in drive. As I pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Mom was standing at the end of the driveway, a solitary figure against the backdrop of the house she had sacrificed everything to keep, and then lost anyway. She had snapped in that courtroom. She had broken the cycle. But in doing so, she had broken herself. I drove toward the highway, leaving Silver Creek behind. I had my justice. I had my truth. And on the seat beside me, I had a picture of two little girls who had no idea that one day, a set of car keys would cost them each other. The seasons changed. The snow melted, the ground thawed, and the world moved on. 6 months had passed since the gavel fell in that mahogany courtroom, and in that time, the silence in my life had transformed from a threat into a companion. I was sitting in my new car, parked overlooking the river. It was a Velocity X9, a sleek, silver machine that cost nearly as much as the Centurion. The insurance check had come through swiftly, because I had provided the black box data, because I had proven the theft beyond a shadow of a doubt, and because I had exposed the fraud before the insurance company had to pay a dime to the Morris family. They had treated me like a VIP. They paid out the full replacement value of the Centurion, $85,000, minus a small deductible that they later waived as a customer retention bonus. I gripped the leather steering wheel. It felt the same cool, smooth, expensive, but the feeling in my chest was different. When I bought the Centurion, I felt like a conqueror. I felt like I was proving something to the world, to my mother, to the ghost of my poverty-stricken childhood. Now, sitting in the X9, I just felt comfortable. The validation was gone. The thrill was gone. I realized, with a quiet sort of wisdom, that $85,000 of metal and glass could protect you from a crash, but it could not protect you from the truth. It was just a car. It was a tool to get from point A to point B. The emotional baggage I had loaded into the trunk of the Centurion had died with it against that telephone pole. I started the engine and drove back toward the city. My route took me through the working-class district on the south side, a neighborhood of brick tenements and faded awnings. This was where Mom lived now. She had moved into a subsidized apartment complex called The Pines, though there were no pine trees, only a few scraggly bushes and a lot of concrete. It was a drastic fall from the colonial house on Elm Street with its willow tree and two-car garage, but it was hers, for the first time in 25 years. She was living a life that was mathematically honest. I had not seen her since the day she handed me the photograph in the driveway. We did not talk, but I knew she was there. I felt her presence in the city like a phantom limb. I had set up a recurring delivery with a grocery service, every 2 weeks, a box of Staples rice, pasta, Canned goods, fresh vegetables, good coffee arrived at her door. I paid for it anonymously. I told myself it was charity. I told myself I would do the same for any stranger in need. But deep down, I knew it was the last vestige of the daughter I used to be. Trying to ensure she didn't starve while she served her penance, Tiffany was serving a different kind of penance. The letters from the state penitentiary arrived like clockwork. They were written on cheap, yellow-lined paper, the handwriting jagged and frantic. "Hope, please send money for the commissary. I need shampoo. The stuff they give us is gross. Hope, Mom is not answering my calls. Tell her to pick up. I am lonely. Hope, I am sorry about the car. Really? But do you think you could talk to the lawyer about an appeal I cannot do 3 years? It is too hard. Hope, if you send me $500, I can get a better job assignment in the laundry." I never opened them past the first few lines. I did not read the excuses. I did not read the guilt trips. I had a ritual now. I would stand over the stainless steel sink in my kitchen, strike a match, and hold it to the corner of the envelope. I would watch the yellow paper turn to black ash, curling and crumbling until there was nothing left but a smudge of carbon. It was not cruelty. It was hygiene. I was keeping my life sterile. Tiffany was a virus, and I was refusing to let her reinfect me. One Tuesday evening, I needed to pick up a prescription. I stopped at a large chain drugstore on the edge of the city, not far from the Pines. I walked down the aisle, looking for vitamins. The store was quiet, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. I turned the corner into the household goods section, and there she was. Mom was standing in front of the laundry detergent. She was wearing a red vest with the store's logo on it. She held a pricing gun in her hand, methodically tagging bottles of bleach. She looked different. The last time I had seen her, she looked 80. Now, she looked her age, maybe a little older. Her hair was completely gray, cut short in a practical, no-nonsense bob. She wore no makeup. Her hands, which used to be manicured, were rough and red, the knuckles swollen. She looked tired, but she also looked solid. She reached up to place a bottle on a high shelf. Her arms shook slightly with the effort. I froze. My instinct was to turn around, to walk away, to pretend I had not seen her, but my feet stayed planted. She turned around to grab another bottle from her cart. She saw me. She did not drop the bottle. She did not gasp. She just stopped. We stood there for a long moment. 2 women in a drugstore aisle, separated by 10 feet of linoleum and a lifetime of mistakes. "Hello? Hope," she said. Her voice was lower, raspier than I remembered. "Hello. Mom." She looked at my coat, a cashmere trench that cost more than she probably made in a month. She looked at my shoes, then she looked at my face. "You look good," she said. "Healthy. You look working hard," I said, stumbling over the words. She looked down at the pricing gun in her hand. "Yeah, it is inventory week. Lots of tagging." I looked at her vest. "Does the leg hurt?" I asked, remembering her arthritis. "Some days." She said, "But standing is better than sitting at home thinking." She placed the bottle on the shelf. The movement was precise, deliberate. "I got the groceries," she said, not looking at me. "The coffee, the pasta." I did not say anything. "Thank you," she said softly. "You did not have to do that. I wanted to." I said. She nodded. She picked up another bottle. I saw Tiffany's letter. She said, "The one she sent to the house before I moved." She said, "You are not writing back." "No." I said, "I am not." "Good," Mom said. I blinked. "What?" She turned to face me fully. Her eyes were clear. There was no manipulation in them, no pleading, just a stark, dry honesty. "Do not write back. Hope. She needs to sit in that cell. She needs to feel every single minute of those 3 years. If you write to her, if you send her money, if you give her any attention at all, she will just use it to build a fantasy where she is the victim." She took a breath. "I visited her once," Mom continued, "last month. She spent the whole hour blaming the judge, blaming the lawyer, blaming me. She asked me to smuggle in cigarettes, What did you do? I asked. I walked out. Mom said, I told her I would come back when she could talk about what she did. Not what everyone else did to her. I haven't been back since. I stared at her. This was the woman who had screamed at a judge to protect her baby. This was the woman who had mortgaged her future for a lie. You changed, I said. Mom let out a short, mirthless laugh. I lost everything. Hope, my house, my reputation, my retirement, my family. When you lose everything, you have two choices. You can lie down and die, or you can stand up and look at the mess you made. She gestured around the store. I am stocking shelves at 60 years old. I take the bus to work. I live in a basement. It is hard. But what? But I sleep at night, she said. For the first time in 20 years. I sleep. Because I am not lying anymore. I am not covering up. I am not waiting for the police to call. I am just paying my debt. She looked at me with a fierce intensity. I chose wrong. Hope. I chose the lie over the truth. I chose the sickness over the health. I am paying for it. And I deserve to pay for it. I felt a lump form in my throat. It was not pity. It was respect. Mom, I said, reaching for my purse. The fine. The $10,000 the judge ordered. Have you paid it? She shook her head. They take it out of my paycheck. $50 a week. It will take me years. Let me pay it. I said, I can write a check right now. It will clear the debt. You can keep your whole paycheck. You can save for a better apartment. Mom looked at my purse. For a second, I saw the old Brenda flicker in her eyes the desire for the easy way out, the relief of a rescue, but then she shook her head. No, Mom, it is okay. I have the money. No. Hope, she said firmly. She stepped back, putting distance between us. If you pay it, I learn nothing. If you pay it, I am just the charity case again. I need to feel this. I need to see that money come out of my check every Friday. I need to remember why it is happening. She looked at the pricing gun. I am doing this myself, she said. For the first time in my life, I am cleaning up my own mess. Please, do not take that away from me. I looked at her hands. They were rough, damaged, and beautiful. Okay, I whispered. She nodded. She looked at the clock on the wall. My break is over in 2 minutes. She said, I have to finish this aisle. Okay, she hesitated, then looked at me one last time. I am proud of you. Hope, she said, not because you are rich, not because you have a fancy car, but because you were strong enough to stop me. You saved me, you know. By destroying me, you saved me. Tears pricked my eyes. I blinked them back. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Hope. She turned back to the shelf. Click-clack. She tagged a bottle of bleach. Click-clack. She tagged a box of detergent. I turned and walked away. The 10 years I spent building my career felt like a lifetime of grinding stone against stone. The 3 days of the trial felt like a blink of violent, strobe-lit intensity, but the last 2 years, they have flowed like a slow, deep river, steady and irrevocable. I was sitting in the room that we had painted a soft, sage green. It was the nursery. My hand rested on the swell of my stomach, feeling the rhythmic, strong kicks of a daughter who would be born in less than a month. I had already decided on a name. It would not be Hope. I wanted her to have a name that did not imply waiting for something better, but rather existing in the fullness of the present. We were going to call her Grace. My husband, Julian, was downstairs. I could hear the clinking of dishes as he unloaded the dishwasher. Julian was an engineer, a man who understood load-bearing walls and structural integrity just as well as I did. He knew that I came with cracks in my foundation, but he had never tried to patch them over with cheap filler. He just helped me reinforce the beams so the house would stand. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was streaming through the sheer curtains, casting lace patterns on the crib. Then, the doorbell rang. It was not the sharp, demanding buzz of my mother's old house. It was a melodic chime, but my body, conditioned by 3 decades of trauma, still tightened. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing the sudden spike in my cortisol. I waited. Julian usually answered the door if he was home. I heard the front door open. I heard Julian's deep voice, polite but confused. Then I heard a voice that made the blood freeze in my veins. It was a voice that sounded like scratching on a chalkboard, raspy from cheap cigarettes and desperation. "Is my sister home?" I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of baby powder and fresh paint. I exhaled the fear. I stood up. My back ached, a dull throb that was a constant companion in the third trimester. I walked out of the nursery and moved slowly to the top of the stairs. Tiffany was standing in my foyer. She had been released 4 months early. Good behavior. Or maybe just overcrowding. I had not kept track. I had stopped checking the inmate locator website a year ago. She looked different. The prison system had stripped away the soft, pampered edges that Mom had worked so hard to maintain. She was thin, but not in a healthy way. Her skin was sallow, and there were premature lines etched around her mouth. Her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, the blonde dye job long gone, replaced by a dull, mousy brown. She was wearing jeans that were out of style and a jacket that looked too thin for the autumn chill. But her eyes were the same. They were assessing the foyer. They were calculating the cost of the chandelier, the thread count of the rug, the value of the artwork on the walls. She looked up and saw me. Her gaze dropped instantly to my stomach. A flicker of something crossed her face, jealousy. Maybe, or just shock. "Wow," she said. "You did not waste any time." "Hello." "Tiffany?" I said. I did not come down the stairs. I stayed on the landing, looking down at her. It was a position of advantage, and I intended to keep it. Julian stepped between us, his body blocking her path to the stairs. He did not know her face, but he knew the story. He knew exactly who she was. "You must be the sister," Julian said, his voice flat. Tiffany ignored him. She took a step forward, leaning around him to look at me. "Are you going to invite me up? Or are we doing this from the balcony like Romeo and Juliet?" "We are doing this right here." I said, "What do you want?" She let out a short, incredulous laugh. "What do I want? I just got out. Hope, I have been in a cage for 2 years. I have nothing. I have no money. I have no clothes. I have nowhere to go." "That sounds like a difficult situation." I said, "Difficult." She threw her hands up. "It is hell, and you are standing there in your mansion, pregnant and happy, acting like I'm a door-to-door salesman. We are family." Hope I gripped the banister. The wood was smooth under my palm. "We were family," I corrected her. "But you burned that bridge. You burned it, and then you tried to bill me for the matches." Tiffany's face twisted. "Here we go. You are still holding on to that." "It was a car. Hope, a stupid car." "I paid for it. I sat in a cell for 2 years. I paid my debt. You paid your debt to the state," I said calmly. "But you never paid your debt to me. And I'm not talking about the money." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to that wheedling tone I remembered so well. The tone she used when she wanted $20 for gas, or when she wanted me to lie to Mom about where she had been. "Look, I know I messed up. I know I was awful. But I have changed. Prison changed me. I just need a start. Hope, I just need a place to crash for a few weeks. Just until I get on my feet. I can help with the baby. I can—" "No," I said. The word hung in the air, sharp and final. "What no? You are not staying here. You are not sleeping under my roof, and you are certainly never, ever going to be near my child." Tiffany's face flushed red. "You cannot be serious. You are going to leave me on the street. Your own sister. I am not your keeper." "Tiffany, I am not your mother. And even your mother is not your keeper anymore." She flinched at the mention of Mom. I tried to go to her. Tiffany spat. "I went to that dump she lives in. She wouldn't even open the door. She talked to me through the chain lock." I felt a surge of pride for Brenda Lamberton. "She told me to get lost," Tiffany screamed. "She said she couldn't help me." "She is right," I said. "She cannot help you, and neither can I, because helping you has never actually helped you." Tiffany, it just crippled you. Every time we saved you, we just taught you that you did not need to walk because someone else would carry you. I walked down 2 steps, stopping just out of her reach. I am giving you the only gift I have left. I said, I am letting you stand on your own 2 feet. Tiffany stared at me, her eyes filled with tears, but they were the angry, frustrated tears of a child who has been told no for the first time in her life. You are a bitch, she hissed. You are a cold, heartless bitch. I hope your baby knows what kind of monster her mother is. Julian stepped forward then. Get out, he said. Tiffany looked at him, then back at me. She saw the resolve in my face. She saw that the Bank of Hope Lamberton was closed, liquidated, and demolished. She sneered. Fine, keep your perfect life. I do not need you. I do not need anyone. She turned and marched to the door. She slammed it behind her so hard the glass panes rattled. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence return to the house. Julian walked up the stairs and put his arm around me. Are you okay? He asked. I leaned into him. I expected to feel sad. I expected to feel guilt, but all I felt was a profound sense of protection. I was protecting my daughter from the chaos that had consumed my childhood. I am fine, I said, better than fine. I found out later what happened to Tiffany that night. She had gone back to the Pines. She had stood outside Mom's basement apartment, pounding on the door, screaming for Mom to let her in, to give her money, to fix it. Mom had opened the door. She did not let Tiffany in. She stepped out into the hallway, closing the door firmly behind her. She was wearing her grocery store uniform, smelling of bleach and honest work. She looked at her daughter, the daughter she had gone to war for, the daughter she had destroyed herself to save. I love you, Tiffany, Mom had said, her voice steady. I love you enough to not let you destroy what little I have left. Mom, please, Tiffany had begged. I have nowhere to go. Then go to the shelter. Mom said, go to the employment office. There is a temp agency on 3rd Street. They are hiring. You are kicking me out, Tiffany screamed. I am not kicking you out. Mom said, I am inviting you to grow up, when you are clean, when you have a job, when you can look me in the eye and not ask for a handout, then come back for coffee. But not until then. Mom had turned around and gone back into her apartment. She locked the deadbolt. Click. That sound, the sound of a lock turning. Not to keep people out, but to keep peace in was the true end of the story. Tiffany spent that night in a women's shelter downtown. For the first time in her life, she slept on a cot she had not paid for with manipulation. She ate soup she had not stolen. She was just another face in the crowd. Anonymous and unsupported. It was the rock bottom she had needed to hit 10 years ago. Whether she would climb out of it or build a house there was entirely up to her, and for the first time, the outcome was not my responsibility. Later that evening, I sat in the rocking chair in the nursery. The house was quiet. Julian was asleep. I looked out the window. The street lamp cast a pool of light on our driveway. Parked there was my Velocity X9. It was silver, practical, and safe. It was covered in a thin layer of autumn leaves. Next to it was Julian's sedan. I thought about the Centurion Obsidian. I thought about its massive black frame, its aggressive grille, its $85,000 price tag. I thought about how much I had loved that car. I had loved it because I thought it proved I was worthy. I thought it proved I had escaped. But I hadn't escaped. Not then. As long as I was driving that car back to that house, seeking their approval, buying their affection, I was still a prisoner. It took the destruction of that car to break the lock. It was a trade, a violent, expensive, painful trade. I had traded a luxury SUV for a life of truth. I had traded a relationship with my sister for a relationship with myself. I had traded my mother's enabling for my mother's respect. I touched the glass of the window. Mom had snapped. That is what people would say. They would say Brenda Lamberton went crazy in a courtroom, but she hadn't gone crazy. She had woken up. Bones have to break before they can be set straight. Mom had to break so she could heal. And me? I looked down at my stomach. Grace kicked again, a strong, assertive thump against my hand. I smiled. I had lost a car. I had lost a sister. I had lost the illusion of a happy family. But I had gained my freedom. I had gained a husband who respected me. I had gained a mother who was finally, actually, a parent. And I had gained a future for my daughter that would be free of the generational curse of enabling and entitlement. I watched the leaves blow across the hood of my car. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the air of my own home, paid for with my own money, protected by my own boundaries. It was the most expensive breath I had ever taken, and it was worth every single penny. I was finally, truly, driving my own life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it was a long journey, but I wanted to share every detail because I believe that sometimes you have to let things break to fix them properly. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you listening while driving to work, cooking dinner, or maybe taking a walk? Please let me know in the comments below. I always love reading about where our community is from. If you enjoyed this story and want to support the channel, please consider subscribing to Family Revenge Stories, liking this video, and hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people who might need the courage to set their own boundaries. Until next time, take care of yourselves.